Hello and welcome. This is Andy, and today we will be talking about Heroic, one of the new mechanics that's coming in with Theros. So after naturally, it's been spoiled before the pre-release quite a few times. It seemed like a promising mechanic, and I got to play quite a lot with it in the pre-release, and naturally, it was played a lot against me as well, with varying degree of success. So, what about Heroic? Is it a good mechanic? Is it great? Is it mediocre? I mean, should we not care? It's actually a great mechanic, um, and can be a game changer, to be honest. However, you need really good heroic cards, and your deck needs to be built to maximize the use of heroic. For example, I'll give you an example of not very good heroic cards. A Crowing Crusader, for example. It looked promising. I mean, it generates a 1/1 token whenever it's targeted by a spell. But that's the problem, though, is that it needs to be targeted by a spell that you cast, right? It can't actually be activated ability, a triggered ability, or any of that thing. It needs to be a spell that you cast. So there really is a finite number of spells that you can cast on this. And really, it's for 1/1 and generates a 1/1 token. You need quite a bit. And really, there's not that much that will make this more powerful. Like if we use Dragon Mantle on this, it's a cheap one to cast enchantment. Cast it on this, you generate a 1/1 token. However, it's a very weak effect, right? Other than the fact that you draw a card. So this is not this is a very mediocre. Unless you get a repeatable effect like Cipher, for example, uh, from Return to Ravnica. The Cipher mechanic works well with this because those Cipher spells can be recast. However, unless you can do it a lot, this is not going to be your next young Pyromancer or any good token generator. It's just not going to be. It's just not that good. Similarly with Cetacean Battle Priest, generally you gain 2 life for each spell cast on him. So again, you have a finite number of spells that you can cast on it, and it really isn't worth the trouble. So you gotta avoid heroic triggers like these um, uh, as much as possible, even if you're trying to build towards heroic. Now let's take a look at some cards with good effects. Fort Triton Fortune Hunter is actually a good card on its own. 2/2 for 3. It's a little expensive, but its heroic trigger is draw a card. So basically, any spell that you cast on him, you draw a card. So in a limited environment, drop him as a good 2/2 man, and any combat trick you use on him is basically becomes a cantrip. So that it itself becomes valuable, and you choose cards like these. Especially if you've got a few combat tricks, giant growth, or what's a Theros version, for example. Let's not deviate out of Theros because a lot of these are not that good outside of a limited environment. And then you have things like these. These I don't have the other rare with heroic, not yet anyway. But take a look at this. For Phalanx Leader, it's an uncommon. It's serious. It's 2 to cast 1/1. It's not that good on its own. However, when you cast a spell that targets Phalanx Leader, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. That includes him. So if you've got your little army going on, you put a thing. It makes things like Dragon Mantle a little bit more powerful. You cast a Dragon Mantle on him, and your entire team gets a 1+1/+1 counter. So effects like these with lasting effects are the ones that you really want for heroic triggers. Even those without lasting effects, like Annex and Cymede, for example. Again, on its own, a 3/2 first strike with Vigilance for 3 is pretty good. It's a good body, but he becomes a combat trick for your entire team. So you attack with your entire team do an Alpha Strike. He chooses to block whatever. It picks and chooses what he blocks. And then you cast a spell on him, like, let's say, Coordinated Assault. I'm choosing fairly weak cards here. So, sorry, weak combat tricks here. I could not find some of the other stuff I've got. So, you can choose, when you cast it on him, your entire team gets +1/+1, gains trample, and naturally gets already +1/+0 from here. So it becomes a 5/3 trampler, 5/3 trampling first strike and with vigilance. And the rest of your team gets a +1/+1 counter. It's very nice. It's very easy to note too, while I have Coordinated Assault here, that casting this while you have these two cards, which, by the way, looks like they could be in, they'll fit into one deck. Choosing two, when one spell targets two creatures, and each one of them has a heroic trigger, it triggers both. So you cast this on Phalanx Leader and is it Ajax? Annex, there we go. Phalanx Leader and Annex and Siamede. He gets a +1/+1 counter in addition to the +1/+1 that he gets. Yeah, so he gets now +2/+2 and the 1/+0 from this card. So that is, he becomes a 6/5. Yes, no, 6/4. First strike, vigilance, and trampling. While your Phalanx Leader gets his own +1/+1 token, gets +1/+1 from here, becomes 3/3, followed by this to give him +1/+0. So yeah, that actually is, when you have good heroic cards like that, and it makes cards like this, any of your even small combat tricks, very valuable. Essentially, it increases the value of whatever combat tricks you've got, even though it is even if your combat trick itself is very weak. One thing to note too, that some people actually would like to use their own, to Spark Jolt their own heroic creature. 1 damage, for example. I deal 1 damage to Annex and Siamede. It won't kill him. It'll deal him 1 damage, but you get his heroic trigger and Spark Jolt, and you get the Scry 1. I am not, and when you cast it on Phalanx Leader, damage hit the spell cast. I actually don't know if it will kill this Phalanx Leader or not. I'm not that good when it comes to triggers. So when you cast it, it goes into the stack and not countered. Okay, so I'm not sure if it gets countered, or I am not sure if this needs to resolve for the heroic trigger to resolve. That's what I'm not quite certain. But some people use this anyway. Smarter people than me will definitely know. Sadly, I am not that big of I'm not that much of an expert. I am not an expert at all. I just enjoy talking about these mechanics. So if I'm wrong, definitely point it out. And I am always happy to say I made a mistake. Now, another thing to note too is that spells like this, like Martial Glory, again, it's not the same set. I don't have the there is a version of this, I believe. I'm not sure if there's a version of this from Theros, but you get to choose 2 target creatures. Now, here's the question here that I've seen. For majority of people, from what I've read, or basically what seems to be the ruling on this, is that since it's just 1 spell, and the heroic trigger is whenever you cast a spell that targets this creature, you'll get the effect. So since Martial Glory is just 1 spell, even if you target 1 creature with both abilities, it'll only trigger heroic trigger once. That is the general consensus that I've seen so far. I have to really try to find out more about it. But generally speaking, when you cast Martial Glory, you'd want and you have two good heroic creatures on the board, you may as well trigger them both. Why not, right? Um, Although, if the ruling is wrong and this will trigger one heroic twice, cards like this will become become much more valuable than they normally are. So this allows you to tap target creature an opponent controls, and they don't untap during the next untap step. So if this actually works to trigger this twice, then Wave Crash Triton will become quite powerful. So that is it for Heroic. I believe the next one I will be talking about is Devotion, which definitely worked well for me during the pre-release. So, oh, one more thing too. Like, just as a note, I know I use this as an example already, but as a reminder, enchantments always target. So even if even if the word target does not appear, not that any of you had any questions about that, but that did come up in the pre-release. So and the judge did mention that it is a targeted ability or a targeted spell. So just to clear it up, it's also for my benefit to remember that. All right. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later.